I walk in on Monday and where's my team? And the 3 people that were there quit. And execution was a big chunk of that $50,000 campaign, and now it's not. Companies they're cranking out 1,000 ad creatives a day with AI, but it's not really capturing the essence of the brand.
So Stephane, you started out studying painting and making sculptures, but your wife had a modeling agency in New York, and she couldn't exactly figure out how to run her business in a way that really made money. And so you dove in, figured it out, and you built out a way to get models to where they needed to be on time and at scale, right? You basically use data to make the modeling agencies more effective. Mm-hmm. This got you hooked. And so you learned how to use data to make other companies more money. Today, you run a company that helps big companies stay on brand and in regulatory compliance with AI. But the part that's most interesting to me is that it's pretty secretive because you deal with regulations, so you can't actually share too much about it. Tell us about the first time that from a scale perspective and a structure perspective, like you realized you had a real business here.
For Voxaic, I realized I had a real business when the output of our first few clients was validated, where the brand owners and the brand managers couldn't tell that the output was primarily AI driven. A lot of what we solved for was keeping things on brand, but deeper than just mimicry. So, when you feed an LLM or, ChatGPT or Claude and you give it your brand guidelines, it's pretty much just copying what it's being ingested with, but it doesn't understand why the brand exists. And that for brand teams and for marketing teams that understand the value of that, if you can get the LLM to really understand that, that's when you unlock new creative ideas, new campaigns, not just repeating variants of the same stuff that starts to get old and starts to drift off brand.
And how did you realize this pain? Like, what was it that got you into this?
So over the years, before AI, obviously, working with a lot of companies, I always was sitting on the kind of intersection of sales, marketing, and creative, and the importance of creative and brand to the companies that realized that that's what drove real customer sentiment and adoption and retention. If they figured out how to scale that, then that was like the big unlock for them. When AI came around, it was, oh my God, look, we can just crank out so much more creative. And what happened was volume turned into, AI slop, obviously, but there is, there are companies they're cranking out 1,000 ad creatives a day, but it's not really capturing the essence of the brand. And while you might have some short wins and you'll see the numbers go up, it's not building the brand. It's just kind of keeping it afloat, and you're waiting for the next hit to happen. So that's when I realized, what if there was a way to take all of the context that really matters and make sure that before you even start your chat or start your workflow, the system really had that all figured out and was able to kind of work within those guardrails to make sure that everything coming out was on brand, that followed all the essence of the brand, not just the stylistic surface level stuff.
So basically for companies in scale mode, right? Because I imagine this problem is a very unique stage of business problem. Like at the beginning of a company's life, like they probably care more about product market fit, getting stuff out there more than staying on brand. And so I imagine there's a certain size where this starts to be super interesting, which is businesses in scale mode, right? And separately, businesses in industries that are super regulatory.
Yeah, for sure. You've got, like the regulated stuff is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you have to stay within certain rules and regulations, or else you're going to get fined, you're going to get penalized. That's kind of like very clear. I think when we talk about AI now, a lot of the conversation from what I'm hearing and what I'm talking about is that because of the amount of output that AI can produce in such short time for so cheap, having that ability to have that creative direction to pull out the variants that are on brand and lead with those first, instead of just throwing like a meta ad test of 1,000 different variants and seeing what hits. That's kind of where the key is. So when I found that there was a way to get that injected before you tell the AI to go do something, not just, hey, look at this one ad and give me like 1,000 variants of it. Take this one ad, understand who our customers are, understand where we want the brand to evolve to be, and then over time, feed it different audience perceptions. As you know, like as a brand evolves, your audience evolves. That's why the brand evolves. It should evolve. It should never stay the same. So as your customers' perception of value changes, you should be able to shift in real time to meet that. And there was no system that can incrementally help you along that path. It was just every time was like, all right, here's like a new version of our brand deck, and here's like some more ads we think are working. But if you can have a library of all different pieces of context that you can puzzle together to create a new approach to a campaign, then that was going to be like, for me, great. It's another system I can use. I can just plug it in. I could spend all the time doing the thinking work and not all the mechanics of how do we get the LM to figure it out. So when I saw the software, I didn't see it as like, oh, we're a software company now, we're going to sell software, it's great, this is magic tool. It's not. The software is like the last piece to implement all of the thinking that people are forgetting you need to do right now. So I'm almost like getting back to basics, but then using a piece of technology to inject it into the new tools that we have with AI. Does that make sense?
Let's talk about thinking for a sec. What is audience perception, right? Like at its core, I get it's like how the audience perceives you. Got it. Yeah. But I imagine there's kind of like, is there a framework for it? Is there like a scoring or indicators to tell that the perception of your brand is changing? Like, how do you guys figure out what audience perception is and how you should mold your brand to it?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of different ways that a lot of different companies will tell you how they do it. Voice of the customer, right? Just ask your customers. I don't think there's a standard like rubric that you can apply to every brand and just score their customer sentiment. But I think if you understand why your brand exists in the world and what it's trying to solve for and how it should make your customer feel when they're using your product or getting their service delivered, then you have to kind of come up with your own scoring methodology. I mean, there's some probably like, 60, 70% that's the same, but it's that sweet spot that you can layer in on top that helps you really understand, are we hitting our mark? And for some companies, flash in the pan works, right? There's a lot of dropshipping companies and new brands are coming out. And if it doesn't work, they'll just shift and things like that. But legacy brands really have to stay true. Well, they don't have to, but they should, right? And you'd expect them to, right? They're legacy brands, the whole definition of a legacy brand. When they start to drift, that's when you see things in the news like Cracker Barrel logos and the Jaguar logo, like all these things. Why? Because probably some data point told them that this is like where they should go, but they lost sight of the human aspect of it. So that's what the battle is, always trying to find out. And this is throughout my career, is like, well, the data said we should do this. I'm like, yeah, but did your customers really do that? Or was that just like the numbers? Is that short-term thinking? Is that really where the market's headed? And then you kind of combine that with macroeconomic things and you can kind of figure out, well, the world is changing, we should change. But if you're just looking at kind of numbers to dictate your week over week, your brand is going to start to zigzag everywhere and no one's going to know what your brand is.
And is this, do you work more with B2B or B2C folks? Like I'm trying to think about like how we did audience perception.
Yeah.
And I think we did a combination of, say, client surveys or customer surveys, so like NPS scores, social listening tools, and we also did secret shoppers where we would hire people to go through the process secret, be like an infiltrated customer, and give their experience at the end, right? Yeah. But I imagine some of those are more applicable to folks who are listening in B2B versus B2C.
I mean, we have a mix. I would say it's kind of down the line, B2B, B2C. Secret shoppers, that just brought back some memories though. I used to do that a lot.
Did you do secret shoppers?
Yeah. For CPG all the time.
Those are fun. Yeah.
And then I think when I was younger, I think I like participated as a secret shopper just to like see what it was like. But yeah, it's bias is tough too, right? Because if you're incentivizing somebody to give you an opinion, that tends to like backfire sometimes. I've done a ton of focus groups. I think there's an art and a science behind all that. For B2B, that's the thing. It's like, so I never really saw the distinction between like B2B creative and marketing and B2C. Because at the end of the day, you're selling to a person, right? And people buy with emotion. And you'll see it even in enterprise sales. Like there'll be some deal that closes and you realize that, wow, we closed that because of not our product or service. We closed it because of the relationship we had with the buying committee, right? And that goes a long way. So that should also translate into like your brand mechanics and your sales collateral as a B2B company and everything else. Because at the end of it all, people don't want to just buy the best amazing piece of software if there's no human behind it at all. I mean, maybe that's changing, but like that's throughout my career, I found that that goes a long way. So that's kind of leaning on the B2C experience. It's all about the customer. Whereas like B2B, I think a lot of companies think, well, it's all about our product. It's all about us. It's all about our software. And I think that's short-sighted thinking.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting distinction, like the B2B, B2C distinction. I think it's probably a shorthand for a few assumptions, like LTV. Like B2B assumes bigger deal size,
Right.
B2C and assumes smaller deal size. Not always true, but I think that's probably an assumption that sneaks in there. Um, and then the other assumption is probably volume of folks. So like for
Mhm.
example, I run a B2B, and so we have a lot fewer clients at bigger deal size
Right.
than my peers at a similar size that run B2C companies where they have far more volume of customers. And so so for example, for us, social listening wouldn't work. Whereas for them, social listening may work, that kind of stuff I think about
Right.
a little bit.
Right.
Um, but interesting. And so in terms of like how you structure, I remember like kind of going back to your origin, your Batman story, I think we call it at the beginning,
Batman.
where you helped transform your wife's modeling company. Um, like what was wrong with the company? How'd you structure it?
So I mean, she had a very successful modeling agency. This is going back a long time ago, predates cell
Yeah.
phones. She had 250 plus models running around Manhattan. She had clients that were global, clients that were in Manhattan. Um, and every model has a portfolio. It's like a big, 18 by 24 book of photos. And there were couriers on bikes running around Manhattan all day long for 20 to 40 bucks a pop, round trip, almost 100, all day long from every agency, every casting company. This is just how the world worked. And
Huh.
my wife's very much like me, like, why is it like this? Because I don't
Yeah.
like that the answer is, well, that's just how it's always been. That's how the industry works. That's how it's done. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kiss of death for any company. And so at that time, she's like, well, okay, everything I have to do by phone. Everything I have to like kind of pencil in on a calendar. I have no way to like keep everybody on the same page, whether it's the models, my clients, everything else, faxes. And at this point, this is like, right before 9/11, internet is starting to really take off and things like that. She's like, there's got to be a better way. So we sat down one night and mapped out everything she needs to do to run her company, just whiteboarded everything. And it was post-it notes. It was like a full-on like a UX session almost. And when we started to realize where certain things were either costing time or costing real money, and that led to closed deals, that's how we prioritized what to fix first. And we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just kids. So
Right.
we just started to like be like, okay, there's got to be what if there was a system that did this? What if it did that? What if it did that? And then, of course, it was great is she had such great relationships that she can kind of do that customer research with her clients and say, hey, this sucks. Like, what if they have like, like we spent an hour today on the phone back and forth on 40 calls. Like, wouldn't it have been easier if like you could just log in and like, see all the models and put them on hold and like, when you're done, just book them and the billing was done and you'd have to worry about like all the coordination. Like we just took care of that. And of course the answer is yeah, 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 yeah. Why? Okay. So that validated it. We hired a developer, and in 6 months, we kind of had a proof of concept. We launched it. We had all the models information in there. So now we have like a full data set of all of our models, all the photos, everything else, and all of our clients' contact information. We basically had a CRM. And at that point, I didn't know the word CRM, the acronym. I had no idea what it meant. Someone told me later, actually, when I told them about this, they're like, oh, so you built a CRM. And I was like, oh shit, like I did. Yeah, I didn't even realize what we built. So we built a CRM and it plugged into calendars, it plugged into billing, it plugged into everything. But then we also built this, like we called it email blast, because she's like, I have to send an email to like 100 models right now. Can't call them. There's no cell phones. Some of them have pagers. But at that point, there was no
Yeah.
like Twilio to hit pagers or anything like that. But
Right.
we found out a way to do mass communications and just do like a, hey, there's this casting, you fit the bill for your measurements and everything, and you know, you're blonde, whatever, and send them all that. And then the models had a way to call back the agency. At that point, her one of her assistants could take the call, log it into the system that they're on their way, they're going to go. Don't even worry about your book. We already sent your photos. That's why, you know, the client wants to see you. So it just sped up a lot of stuff. And we started building out all these different tools and evolving them. And then in about 2 years, it was just like the way that all of her clients wanted to do business. So we had a tech company that was in the industry doing like one piece of it, and we sold the platform to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like that's interesting because it sounds like you had two kind of major transformation experiences. One transforming your wife's modeling company, and then the other kind of later on was transforming a big marketing agency. We can kind of get that in there in a second.
Yeah.
In that first one with your wife's modeling agency, your approach was like, hey, this is broken fix, this is broken fix, this is broken fix, putting all these tech tools in.
Yeah.
But then in the next one that you did, it was more kind of like, let's pull out pull out a whiteboard and like design the flow and like map out the business. Do you think one approach worked better for you in one scenario? Like when should you just kind of break fix versus sit down and like map out the business and model it out? When does it make sense to do each?
I mean, in a perfect world, before you have hit your staffing peak, you know, like if you're fully staffed and that operating expense is like filled and you're in motion and you're kind of you have the business momentum, but you don't know how to scale and you don't know how to get to that
Yeah.
next level, that's when you really need to do it. But ideally you want to do it before you kind of got out of the station. And I think a lot of the hustle kind of culture is just get out there, you know, break stuff, break it fast, whatever, and keep going and keep iterating, which is great. But I think what happens is you end up with a business that you lost touch with your initial vision. And that's not necessarily wrong. I mean, if it's successful, it's great, but is it really what you set out to do? And I think you have to take a hard look. Is that important, right? Did you need to stay on that vision, or maybe you pivoted and you found something and you're off to the races there? I mean, it depends if you're all about solving the initial problem that your company was built to do, or if you're just out to make your first million and, you know, expansion anyway always doesn't matter as long as you hit the numbers.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I love to map out business flows, right? The way that we did it in consulting was a system is just people, processes, and tech. And so first you draw out the process, and then in each node you figure out like, okay, is it a human or is it a tech tool doing that thing, right? And I feel like I've always approached business that way.
Yeah.
Now with AI, the cost in terms of time and literal money to make tech nodes is going down drastically. And so I find myself kind of experimenting more than I am sitting with a whiteboard and drawing in terms of the process flow. But we're getting to a point now where it makes sense to start adding in the flows and the people and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Has AI changed how you think about how you transform businesses?
100%. I think to your point, it's so easy to kind of whip up a proof of concept that'll solve a business problem. And it's not like maybe your thing won't be the full fix, but at least you've proven it out. And what used to take money and time and expertise to kind of get to that point would make you hesitate on even like going down that path. But now, you know, you fire up Claude Code over a weekend, kind of just crank out something quick. And you're like, wait. So, okay, if this has got legs, let's think about it. And then you go out and you build it the right way, of course. Don't just vibe code something critical. But that's definitely changed. I think speed to market, not for your end product, but speed to market with the fixes to make your business more efficient and more profitable. That's accelerating really fast. And the funny, getting back to the human piece, is like, if you look at all these new frameworks that are coming out to manage agentic workflows, Paperclip and all of like the Claudebot stuff, it's all about, oh, I created like the org chart of, you know, my board of directors, and everybody's like replicating the human hierarchy with AI agents. And I'm like, is that the right thing? Are we just kind of automating everything? Or is this like, in order to scale, do we have to think differently? Maybe that our org chart of humans doesn't apply to the business of the future because agents can think differently, or you can teach them to think differently. So maybe you're coming up with new roles. So I think it's the first step in an evolution, and I think it's gonna be really interesting in a couple of years to see what
Yeah.
that agentic one human led company is going to look like. It was not going to probably have a CMO with like a creative team under and this now whatever. It's going to have like some new hodgepodge of like new roles. So I'm keeping an eye on that, and I'm kind of playing with it. It's like very
Yeah,
futurism.
I don't know what the answer is because like a job is a role is just a bundle of tasks, right? And so traditionally we group that bundle one way. In the future we'll group
Oh,
it a different way. I don't know what that looks like yet either.
yeah, but it's
Um,
also bundled to expertise, right? I mean, you have to have the institutional knowledge of the responsibilities and the jobs that you have to get done are because you have an innate understanding of why those have to get done. So now when
yep.
you have agents and you're giving them all that knowledge, is the framework the same? Do you still need that kind of tiered hierarchy of C-suite and middle management and execution layer?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for us, we're building it that way.
Yeah.
And so I had last week we had an interview with a guy who built his whole agency using AI agents, um, and well, and humans. And so
Mhm.
what they were talking about is the bottom layer, the doers, are now up a level, and the agents are the doers, right? And everyone's more strategic and that kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
it's changing how we're transforming companies for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and how did that? So like you had a so you transformed your wife's company, right?
Mhm.
And then you had another big kind of uh like business transformation, like restructuring for a marketing agency. What did that look
Yeah.
like?
S- Um, that was kind of like oh crap. That wasn't a Batman moment. That was like an oh crap moment. So,
Yeah.
uh,
What
years
was the oh
after
crap
that,
moment?
yeah, right. Years after that, I went to a smaller direct marketing company and kind of just snuck in on the creative team. I wanted to learn customer acquisition and more of the marketing side of things. And so I kind of worked my way up there, led the creative team, and then made my way over to the marketing side and took over marketing. So I was there for 4 years. Then I got poached by a much larger, it was actually one of our clients. I got poached and took a job as their creative director with a mission of training their 45 to 50 creative staff team how to design and write online. They're pretty much a print company, and they knew that they had to go digital, and they were in the throes of transformation there, but they didn't want to let anybody go. So they hired me to kind of go in and teach them that stuff. And at the time I was living in the city, I was taking the train back and forth, and they had their online division as kind of a separate corporate entity. So the GM was on the train with me every day. And well, yeah, we're just everybody who's living in the city. We're all taking the train back and forth. So he'd have his laptop open, and I'm kind of checking my emails or whatever. And he'd be like, "Take a look at this," and it was like the customer acquisition numbers of the day. And so I'm looking, and I'm like, "Why is he asking me?" I'm like, "I'm creative. Like, does he know like my background's a little bit marketing, but I wanted to get back into creative." So this went on for like 5, 6 weeks, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "It's not making sense," but it's not really my business, and I don't want to like, kind of tell him like this is looking a little weird. And then one day I was just like, how come the report today doesn't look like the same report as yesterday or the day before? Like the numbers that you're getting, it's not even about like the data. It's just like even the way it looks, like the columns aren't the same, the headers aren't the same. It's as if like someone walked in and just like manually made a new report for you every
Yeah.
day. It's just like an evolving thing. You're working with them to shape it. And he said, I didn't even notice that. I just scroll down to like, the bottom of the page. I just look at the numbers. That's all I really care about. And I'm like, well, how confident are you that all the stuff in the 100,000 rows above are like feeding into that the right way? He's like, because I just assume, I mean, this is what the company gave me. So I'm really just concerned about the bottom line here. And then so I started digging in deeper. And then he started sharing the reports with me. And then I came up with a couple of gaps, like things that should have been clear patterns, one way, for better or worse, day over day, week over week, were just all over the map. I'm like, this is like almost impossible based on what you're telling me these numbers are coming from as far as like customers and data and spend and media. I said, it just doesn't work that way. And I know you guys aren't doing something fundamentally different, but why is this? And he's like, I don't know. So after a couple more weeks, he said, listen, you've been here for about 5, 6 months now. I think you're hitting diminishing returns with the creative side. You've taught them what they can learn. You just need to kind of break free. I'd love to have you come over to our side. I'll give you the customer acquisition department, clean up shop, just figure it all out. He's like, carte blanche, you report to me, you report to the CEO, you'll have, the board to answer to, but I'll just give you the whole department. It's a team of 3. So I go home, I tell my wife, I'm excited. I'm like, oh, I got this great opportunity. I don't know what I'm walking into, but it sounds great, blah, blah, blah. So celebrate over the weekend. I walk in on Monday and get in my office. I'm like, great, where's my team? And the 3 people that were there quit. And I think it was like the jig was up. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. So I walk in now. I'm like, it's Monday. Everybody's looking at me. I'm getting intro to like the people in that division. And, I hear all the whispering and everybody's like, oh yeah, his whole team like left. They're gone, whatever. He's so screwed and this and that. So that was my like panic moment, but I got to play cool. So I make it through that day. I'm like trying to figure things out. I'm just meeting people. It was, like Monday. I take the train home. He's like, how'd it go? He's like, I heard what happened, whatever, but don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. You're a smart guy, blah, blah, blah. I go home. I don't sleep. And I'm like, I got to figure out what to do here because it's like sink or swim. And so I made a decision. I was like, you know what I need to do? I'm like, you know what? The bottom line here is the same thing. I'm like, there's no map of the business. Like there's kind of like the dashboard of like where they think they are. And that's kind of frail and probably not real, but no one knows like everything feeding all these different processes and what are people doing, where the numbers coming from, everything. So I walked in the next day and I just started interviewing everybody I could. And I wasn't going VPs and like heads of departments. I was going in the trenches. I was talking to data analysts. I was talking to just anybody that had their hands in the work. And because I just knew that kind of company, the VPs were just kind of, doing the office politics stuff. It was a very just old corporate environment culture. And so I even went across the street because someone's like, you need to go talk to so-and-so across the street. I'm like, what's across the street? Oh, that's the data warehouse. You're going to love it. And I walk in and it's like, I don't know, it was like war games. There was like a white room with like tape drives spinning and there's like a computer terminal with like a green screen, like running Fortran. There's like one guy who works there and he's been there for like 35 years. And I think it's like, they just keep him there because if he dies, the whole company goes down. So I learned from him, like, that's like the main database from like the late 60s and everything sits on top of it. And if that breaks, then like the company's over. And I'm like, well, that's like the worst linchpin I've ever heard. Why is that? So I go back to my office and I'm like doing it. I fill up a whole dry erase board. I'm like, I need another dry erase board. I ran into a conference room. I like stole the dry erase board from there, wheeled it into my office. By the end of the week, I had like 3 dry erase boards. It was a complete service map just of customer acquisition, just media sources, how we're logging new members, what the costs are, all these different things, where the different teams are. And then the next week, I said, listen, the only way that we're going to fix this is if we just pause all operations for like a week. And that did not go over well. That was like, you can't do that. Like, we're never going to get a green light to do that. You can't do that. Like, we need the income, we need the revenue. I'm like, but you don't even know if that revenue is real. I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell you here. Like, and I was able to go to the map and be like, see where this breaks right here? Like, that's a guess. The timing's off on these reconciled reports. Like, I don't think these numbers where you think you're hitting are actually real. I said, and I think the next thing I need to do is go to finance and like look at the actual numbers of like money in the bank and seeing if it's like making sense here. So I got the green light. We shut it down for, I think it was like 7 business days. And I redid the whole entire system. And then from there, I was like, okay, great. Let's make it a lot simpler. Let's cut out the fluff. Let me now figure out who I need to hire to get things done. So I could have, like, let's say I had the team in place. I would have been trying to keep this weird business afloat for a week with a team that didn't know what they were doing, figure out what was the problem, then trying to get a team who didn't know what they're doing to do some new work. And it was almost like a godsend that they quit because it gave me like such freedom to just rebuild and reshape everything. So that was like another one of those map it all out situations. And that was like fun. So that's been my career for the last 15 years is like I get pulled in by companies saying, I think we need to do this. We just acquired 9 companies. We've got overlapping processes and this and that. We kind of know like where we want to be, but like we can't articulate it. So we don't know what to attack first. So that's been like my bread and butter for like the better part of my career now.
And how did you figure out in that moment, like what to map out and who to hire for those roles. Like the way I've been thinking about it is like two maps is the customer acquisition engine and then the delivery engine. But I imagine if you were just looking at customer acquisition, you probably had to break that into even more segments. Like, how did you figure out what to map and who to hire for that?
Yeah. So one piece of it was that our the vendors we were using, like our media vendors and everything, this is like before programmatic advertising too, but a lot of those deals were just inherited. So I ended up having to rip up like half our contracts and like fire a bunch of vendors because they weren't willing to move and everything. So I was like, I can't do this. This is a lot of manual work. So I needed someone who was good at biz dev. So that was like my
Right.
first role. I needed somebody who knew the industry, knew the players, had great relationships, had a good Rolodex, who could come in. I could sit down with them for a day and say, this is what was happening. This is where we need to be. This is all the stuff I'm ripping up, go find replacements. And then because I know where we want to be, let's look to the future. These are the relationships you need to start bringing in. So that was like my first kind of thing. Then what I was able to do is like, okay, from a reporting perspective, do we have people in-house on other teams that I can maybe beg and plead with their bosses to get their time to kind of do stuff so I didn't have to bring in somebody new and then train them on how the company runs. It was a lot.
Mm,
And it became a mix. So I think it was first and foremost, it was shoring up the lifeline, like the main artery of revenue, which was, we had to spend money on advertising to drive traffic in. So those publishing partners were like super important to us. So I needed somebody in there. That was like first and foremost. Then it was reporting, because obviously measurement in a direct marketing company, if you can't measure it, you're dead.
right.
And then after that, it just started to become more of like rounding it out and everything else. But those are the two critical pieces. I think right there, that solved 90% of my issues.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think data and reporting is something that people, you always push off,
Mhm.
but if you don't have data, you can't actually tell it's working. So, so it's critical from that perspective.
Mhm.
Um, awesome. And so then you go from that to today, you run Voxaic.
Yeah.
Um, now making sure that companies are can scale. Most folks listening to this are focused on scale from that perspective, and so focusing on ensuring that companies can scale their brand from a regulatory perspective and consistency perspective.
Yeah. Everybody either they want to use AI. The consensus from a lot, like there's two sides of it. There's some who are like, oh, if we use it, people are going to know, our customers going to know it's AI and everything else. So there's that just kind of rhetoric going on. But then you have clients who are companies and brands who they want to use it. They think, oh my God, this is like pouring gas on. If we hit strike gold and we throw AI on it, then we could just scale it. And it's
Yeah,
like, at what cost, right?
right,
Is that going to hit your quarterly numbers and blow through the roof? But then it's like it's not sustainable brand growth, right?
yeah,
Um, and then from just an operating model, when you have agencies that are getting pressured by their brand clients saying, hey, why do we need you? We could just use AI and this and that. How
yeah,
does the
right,
agency stay relevant being the arbiter of taste and brand, right? Especially if they're the agency that like built the brand and has like, fostered it and grown it over the past years, a lot of companies will say, well, we don't need you anymore because now we can just take everything you did and feed it to AI.
yeah,
So a lot of the work we do is helping those agencies be more efficient at the execution level stuff to free up their time to have those conversations with their clients to explain the value of that human work that they bring, which is that creative direction, the art direction, knowing that again, you can crank out 7,000 ad units, but it's like, you don't need to run all 7,000 in a
right,
test. Like we just know 1, 2, 3, that's your core customer is going to respond to these. Take these 3, run them against your champion. These are the challengers. That's it. So it's not about scale for the sake of scale with AI, which a lot of brands know. The agencies are having a tough time having those conversations. So what we do is we help those brands position themselves into more of what I think their clients are going to start to see the value, because it's not execution anymore. And it used to be that when you're an agency and do a $50,000 campaign, you've got the levels of ideation all the way down to execution. Execution was a big chunk of that
yeah.
50,000, and now it's not. So how do you
Not so
still
much.
bill
Yeah.
$50,000 with less people but AI, but then not have it be slop? So that's like kind of like the world
It's
we're playing in right now.
So much more strategic now. That's
So
awesome.
much more. It was
Um,
evaluate, yeah.
Amazing. And so where can people find you?
You can go to Voxaic.ai to learn more about us. I'm starting to get back into LinkedIn. I really didn't want to start doing a whole automated content thing for myself. Um, and yeah, I think I'm finding that the more offline conversations I have with agencies and brands about what we just spoke of with execution versus taste and everything is something that I'm going to probably talk about over the next few weeks on LinkedIn, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of people, you know, commenting on both sides of the fence from that. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining. It's been a lot of fun.
yeah, it's been fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right.